Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Surface Navy Association's annual conference and trade show in Northern Virginia, the #1 gathering of surface warfare leaders from across the United States Navy, as well as senior leaders from the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard team. We're partnered with SNA in covering this great show, where our coverage is sponsored by Huntington Ingalls Industries, General Electric Marine, L3 Technologies, and Leonardo DRS. And we're here at the Fincantieri stand to talk to retired United States Navy Vice Admiral Rick Hunt, who is the Chief Strategy Officer here at Fincantieri, but more importantly also was SURF4 once upon a time. Sir, it's always great seeing you, and by the way, congratulations, you're President-elect of this great organization. Barry McCullough, retired United States Navy Vice Admiral and also Senior Executive with Lockheed Martin, is putting down the mantle, and you're picking it up. How does it feel?
It feels absolutely wonderful. You know, this is a great organization, incredibly professional, great outreach. You know, it is the surface warfare organization to be a part of, and I'm glad to head that up and see if we can build upon the great success that has gone before and take it to new levels. So,
very excited about that, and stay tuned. We're going to do a separate interview with Admiral Hunt to talk about some of his priorities once you're inaugurated and you have your whiskey ceremony or whatever you're going to do at the banquet. Let's talk a little bit about the frigate competition. You know, you have experience with the frigate force in your past, and obviously as SURF4, you know, you oversaw that multi-mission force and indeed the entire surface warship force. The Fincantieri is bidding on its own the Italian version of the FREMM ship, which is a partnership between Italy and France to develop multi-mission version of the ship, and you're proposing the ASW version. Last year we spent some time aboard the Italian Navy ship Alpino, and that was kind of an eye-opening experience, and you were good enough to give us a tour of the ship as well. Talk to us a little bit about the requirements definition, and full disclosure, Huntington Ingalls is one of the competitors in that also. They've been very coy about not explaining their proposal. The two littoral combat ships are also in the running, a version of that ship. And of course we have Huntington, and of course we have Bath Iron Works that's teamed with Spain's Navantia on another version of the ship. So that's essentially the field now. The requirements coming down, we believe in September, and the Navy wants to have contract award next year. Talk to us a little bit about how the requirement is evolving. We heard from the SURF4, from Vice Admiral Brown, a little bit about the requirements of the ship. Admiral Boxall, the Director of Surface Warfare, the N96, talked a little bit about that as well. Talk to us a little bit about the requirements evolution, because you guys are really different in that you're fully, in some respect, a foreign design that's coming here to the United States that's different. The United States Navy knows what it knows. I think Admiral Boxall did a good job talking about the USS Princeton. You know, it was the first screw-driven ship, but it looked an awful lot like a sail-driven ship. Talk to us about that process and the success you're making, and at least telling the story about how, about the ship and its merits and how the requirement is evolving.
Well, let me start by saying I think the process that they are using for the frigate competition is as good as I've seen in the last 25 years in the Navy. So it's incredibly interactive. You know, the dialogue for all of the industry participants with the U.S. Navy has been routine. It's been open, transparent, a lot of good interaction with the government customers to make sure we clearly understand what those requirements are. In the past, it hasn't been that open. So we kind of are doing this competition in 3 phases. You know, phase 1 was the request for information, exploration by Navy to see what art of the possible was. The direction was to make it a completely global competition and to open it up to our allies that build ships, that introduced 2 of the 5 competitors, FREMM being the introduction from Fincantieri in Italy, which is, our parent design and what we're doing. I think Navy's been, pretty straightforward on looking at those objectively. We are now in phase 2 where we're working concept design and on a monthly drumbeat with the Navy, going through design requirements to get us to about an 80 percentile, of development. And that informs the Navy with a great amount of information on where they can really go in some of those cost and capability trades. So they're getting input from all the competitors. Questions are going back and forth. We think we understand the customer's requirements better, and it's putting them in a position that they will do phase 3, and I expect to see the draft RFP coming out sometime in the next few months, which will then drive the final down selection to 1. And I believe the way Navy's going to go is if you win that competition, you get that first group of 10 ships. So the process is fast, it streamlines, I think it gets a lot of information. The thing that I like is, the initial focus was ships in the water and operation, so you have actual information, data on how the performance is, what the capabilities are, manning requirements, maintenance requirements, those kind of things that we've struggled with in the U.S. Navy to get right when it was a paper design, and you build it and then you find out you need another 25% sailors, so you enhance the crew, you change things around. I think this lowers the risk quite a bit, speeds up the process quite a bit, and does it with data to back that up. So I like the process.
It was interesting last night. We had a brief conversation, and we were talking about, you mentioned from a manning standpoint, frigates were supposed to have like 150 people, and they ended up having 250 people on it at the end of the day. So, and on LCS, we're working on a whole series of workarounds on that as well. Talk to us a little bit about the merits of your ship, because unlike the other competitors in this, without building you up nor bringing them down, this is an actual anti-submarine frigate that's actually in service right now. So it's not a modified LCS in order to do the mission. We don't know what Huntington Ingalls. They've been very quiet about what their plans are and won't engage in that. And then that's clearly the company's prerogative. But talk to us about, from your standpoint, the merits of this ship and why you think it's the right solution from a United States Navy perspective.
Well, let me start just a little bit different on that question. So first of all, combat systems is being directed as government-provided material, government-provided equipment to the ship. So what we're looking at primarily is building the ship, the hull, mechanical, electrical, the platform that the crew and then the combat systems goes in. When you take a look at the requirements for the combat systems, which I think is phenomenal, first of all, the ESA radar gives you SPY-1D capability. That's the state-of-the-art radar at sea right now in the U.S. Navy.
That's the SPY-1/6 that's going to be going on this ship.
Yes. And you take a look at the anti-submarine warfare capability with the variable depth sonar. This is a capability that matches DDG 51, 2 alpha in capability. It has less capacity. So first of all, I think the Navy has got that requirement right. Staying with that requirement, executing the program is what we really need to track as we go forward. So that being said, that takes a certain size hull to manage all that topside weight, all the weapons that go on there. And I think the sweet spot, plus or minus a little bit, is probably around 7,000 tons. The FREMM in its design, it comes in at 6,900 tons, very close to that. We may get a little heavier in our design submission because we're beefing the ship up to meet some of the damage control, stability, survivability requirements. But I think that's in the sweet spot. So one of the things that we are doing is taking what I call the goodness of FREMM's design and holding to that to the extent that we possibly can. And I think we're going to be able to do that with about 85% or so commonality with the parent design to what the submission is going to be. So what does that give you? It gives you margin across the board, whether it's in habitability, and you've seen the habitability on a FREMM, just phenomenal. 4-person staterooms, with growth. So the crew right now is 135 with extra people in the air det and Marines embarked or whatever kind of team, could be a staff, might be 165 or so. We've got stateroom capability for 200. We have margin there. We have electrical margin for the requirements that Navy has laid out. Very important for all the sensors and the weapons and future capability. When you look at the DDG-51 class evolution, the thing that got tapped out as we went through the sequential from the DDG to the 1 to the 2 and the 2 alpha and 3 is electrical power. That is the biggest demand on ships in the future. We have plenty of margin there. We use the hybrid capability of the engineering and electrical plant capability. So we put a lot of power in there. We can actually siphon power off the main gas turbine engine and put it into the electrical grid. Flexibility, reliability, margin for future things like directed energy weapons and sensor enhancements. Very, very important. I think that is probably the two things that pop up right off the top.
And it's, from your standpoint, your bid is also driven around a purely electric drive ship, right? I mean, the main propulsion motors are fed by 4 main diesels, if I recall correctly.
Correct. So we're going to make those a little bit bigger. We're still kind of doing the sourcing on that, so I won't go into the details. But traditionally, the Italians and the U.S. Navy do the same thing. We operate off the diesels into the electric plant, which contributes tremendously to that ASW capability by having a very quiet propulsion plant, helps to the signature of the ship. And it also gives you great efficiency, just like a hybrid car. So we started doing that in the amphibious force in the U.S. Navy, Macon Island, for example, an electric ship in the beginning. This takes it to a higher, more flexible design. It's the way of the future, and I think we've got cutting-edge technology there.
Well, and we've got that on DDG 1000, Ford class, as well as going to be the Columbia class as well. So, these aren't sort of one-off. I remember talking to a friend about electric drive on submarines, and of course Tellaby and Glenard P. Lipscomb always come to mind, and it's not going to be anything like those ships. And I think it was the Spy 6. So folks, don't beat me up too badly. It's been a long day, and my brain is somewhat softened at the end of it.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Spy 6, the AMDR,
right?
In that name, which is going on Flight 3 DDGs.
Right.
This is a scaled down version, and because of the enhancements of that radar, even though it's a scale down on what's going on from the Flight 3, it equals what we have as a Spy 1D out there right now.
And it's a fully solid state system as well. Well, let me ask you a little bit about how you source this, because the United States Navy, as Admiral Boxall rightly sort of said, the Navy has a tendency of devolving to that which it knows, as opposed to trying to take a risk sometimes elsewhere. I developed the first screw-powered ship, but I put sails on it because I know sails are going to work. The screw might not work. You have to have that. And yet, when it comes to how the Navy acquires and what it acquires, there's a lot of stuff that goes even straight back to World War II. That, hey, that pump's got to be on that deck with an X number of bolts with so much thread showing, because we found that if there was too much paint, we couldn't break bolts, and it's all, a lot of it for very good reason. Are you convinced? Because this ship is a very integrated package. The Italians designed this for maximum underway time, minimum pier side time. So talk to us a little bit about the pier side equation, but the more important thing is how easily you can substitute components that the Navy may specify that doesn't actually potentially degrade from your ability to deliver to that standard, which is baselined on how the ship and the entire operating model is.
One of the great advantages of FREMM is they use condition-based maintenance. So they have sensors on all the equipment sets that we have that comes back and provides real-time condition down to the component level of what's going on in their equipment. So based on that, they do maintenance when necessary, as opposed to the traditional planned maintenance system the U.S. Navy uses right now, where you do it by time, or you do it by events, intervals, that kind of thing. And so we probably do more to make sure we do enough. The condition-based maintenance, doing it at the right times and being able to predict when those times are, allows a much more effective utilization of sailor time to do maintenance. So what I've seen, and You know, traditionally U.S. Navy ships, if you take a look at the maintenance package on crew des, so on the DDGs and CGs, would be somewhere over 200 hours a day devoted to planned maintenance. The Italians, with the first 5 ships operated for the last 5 years, the data that I have from real live experience is that they do about 40 to 50 hours a day, and they achieve an availability, operational availability, A sub O, of about 75%, which is significantly better than what we have in the U.S. Navy. That allows them to have a crew size that is a little bit smaller than that, and they've locked in a number that we feel very comfortable with, between 130, 135, to man the ship and to maintain the rest, because they're not doing that much maintenance. Very effective utilization of time, which goes up against watch standing and all the other things that consume a sailor's day.
And they've been, I've known this because traveling around the world, you occasionally run into Italian frigates, so you know that they're ranging the world. So it's not like all of their operations are exclusively in the Mediterranean. But talk to us a little bit about how many alongside days are because the ship is built for X number of pier side availabilities per year per deployment. So talk to us a little bit about the Italian model on how many days they're programmed to spend alongside for
maintenance. Yeah. So right now what they do, and so Fincantieri's a little bit incentivized to take a look at maintenance and make that as good as they can. So Fincantieri makes a lot of cruise liners. Cruise liners come in for very short periods of time. The maintenance has to start and complete on time. Time is money, and so that's kind of the way they think about designing ships. So different than the U.S. Navy, over a period of a year, they do 2 20-day periods alongside. So pier side, maybe some outside help, primarily sailor work for a lot of this stuff, but 2 20-day periods. U.S. Navy is significantly greater than that. So it's kind of the same ratio of what we have of underway planned maintenance versus condition-based maintenance. The planned periods that they come in, 2 20-day periods a year, and then every 3 years you get a longer one, several months, and the second 3-year period to get a dry dock, that kind of thing that goes up. But the time consumed by keeping the ship in the right material condition is significantly less, again, I think due to the superior upfront engineering, the time and focus they do. It goes to the layout of the ship, how dense the equipment sets are. So they are much less dense. You saw that when you're on Alpino. You can wander around, there's room for removal of parts. Doing maintenance is faster, it's more efficient. They take a look where the spare parts are exactly in the right place to do maintenance in an engine room. Those kind of considerations that are truly state-of-the-art right now, and it's driven by a mindset of meeting the commercial needs for the maintainability and reliability of the ship's major functions.
Well, I mean, the habitability, I mean, we were in a 2-rack stateroom, very comfortable, our own head, own shower. I mean, it was, you could do a long deployment on this ship and actually be pretty comfortable, and great ride quality as well. But let me take you to how much maneuver room you have to swap. There's a lot of Italian componentry on the ship. There's French componentry, obviously. It was a partnership program. The United States Navy wants its own equipment in there. How does this process going to work where ultimately the better, more reliable form, fit, function, et cetera, may be actually overseas components that should be in some of these systems in it? There's some stuff which you can license produce in the United States, et cetera. Talk to us about how this whole equation will behave, because effectively you're taking an off-the-shelf ship that is actually now in service and then trying to adapt it for a U.S. requirement without undermining some of those characteristics and features that would make it attractive in the first instance.
Great question, and Navy is offering us some trade space, and so their guidance or their desire, without exact direction at this point, is where we have common parts, fire pumps, maybe HVAC capability, air conditioning, some of the common parts, they would like to have those as U.S. because it helps the overall U.S. Navy supply system. You know, using stuff off the shelf, make sure you've got parts globally because our ships operate globally. That being said, if we find that we can't meet the requirements in this case driven by the Italian design, you know, the equipment that they use is quieter, less vibration. They do that because it was an ASW ship and they want that acoustic signature as low as possible. The goodness of that is probably makes the mean time between failure, at least in engineering, also become extended because you've got better engineered upfront components. So we're in the process right now of reaching out to suppliers to see if they can meet not only the US specs, but the Italian specs in FREMM. When we get those results back, we'll start making trades. We'll work that, and again, we've been very interactive with our Navy customer, and we'll go in and we'll say, this is why we want to do that. It'll drive some price changes perhaps, and I think that's probably coming over the next several months. But we do have flexibility, and we're going to give best value to the Navy. It may be U.S. I hope a lot of it is. I think most of it will be. But where we find exception to that, we're going to go with the best product to put in the ship to optimize the ship for our sailors.
And one last question, LCS, you guys are one of the two companies that are providing it, at least for the first 26 of those ships. We'll see what happens for the last 26. Obviously, that's the big decision the Navy has to make for the frigate, what became FFGX. A lot of focus and attention. I remember Admiral Harvey almost 10 years ago being like, hey, let's deploy this ship, let's get it out there, let's have sailors play with it. There have been some fits and starts. Now it looks like the deployment is going to happen at some point this year. From your standpoint, talk to us about how you're supporting the Navy team to try to make that happen. I asked Tim McHugh the same question at Austal. Talk to us about how you're working with the Navy to make this deployment and the introduction of this ship into series United States Navy operational service smooth and get those hulls off the piers and get them, whether in San Diego and Mayport, and out there underway.
Yeah, another good question. So we are very serious about making sure that we give the Navy the best ships possible in the best material condition possible, and then we help support and keep the operational availability up. So we are absolutely doing that. I will tell you that Fincantieri at the corporate level is completely committed to increasing the footprint and what we do for the U.S. Navy across the United States. Whether it's production, which is clearly where the FFGX comes in, or the sustainment, the maintenance piece, we want to provide as much assistance to the U.S. industrial base, to the United States Navy as possible. And I'll just say at this point, we are looking at ways to do that. It's been suggested that that would be a very helpful thing, and I think in the future you're going to see that we are moving in that direction.
And obviously in partnership with Lockheed Martin, who's the prime contractor on it. Retired United States Navy Vice Admiral Rick Hunt, former Surf 4, now the Chief of Strategy here at Fincantieri USA. Sir, thanks very, very much. Absolute pleasure, and congratulations on the new side gig.
Thanks, and I like the new side gig too. It's going to be wonderful. Thank you.